Welcome in, everyone. This is a new episode of Catfish on Ice with your host, Chad Minton, on this really crazy day down here in Florida. Recording a little bit early today because I'm not sure if I'm going to have power or internet later this evening. As I'm sure you've seen in the news and heard about it, Hurricane Idalia is riding up the Florida West Coast and the Gulf of Mexico right now. I'm in the Tampa Bay area, as many of you know. And so I'm going to try to get this episode out as quick as possible here early in the day before the weather takes a downward spiral. First of all, anyone who's in the Florida area and in the path of what's going to be a pretty nasty storm, especially with storm surge, please take all the precautions necessary to keep yourself safe. And you can't mess around with storm surge. That's the number one way that people unfortunately lose their lives in these storms. So please take it serious. Get to a safe spot. Glad to have you with us if you are watching on our YouTube channel. And if you end up downloading the podcast the following day, we also appreciate you as well. And we hope you're safe from these storms if you're in the path of Hurricane Idalia. But yes, so want to get this episode out as quick as possible for you early in the day. This is episode 196 of Catfish on Ice, brought to you by Raycon wireless earbuds and speakers with our promo code THPN for 15% off your order. And of course, DraftKings also with a promo code THPN. We have a new offer from DraftKings that I will tell you about later in this episode. Also, hoping to do a live portion of the episode if my internet and electricity cooperates later in the evening. I'm hoping my awesome co-host Rich Howe can join me for more of the live portion of this episode. But either way, we wanted to get at least this portion of the episode out to you on our YouTube channel. And we really appreciate you subscribing to the channel as well. If you haven't done that already and you want to hit subscribe on our YouTube channel, please do that. It helps a ton. All right. So this is what I'm getting into today. First of all, we got to start projecting and building what the starting lineup for the Nashville Predators is going to look like on opening night against the Tampa Bay Lightning to open the 23-24 season. This is a major series of different questions involved in how the lineup's going to be built, because it is a very much a brand new looking team. If you span back just 6 months ago at the end of February, before the trade deadline, this team looked so vastly different than what it looks like now, obviously, through free agency and the trade deadline. And you have a new head coach in Andrew Burnett. You have a new GM in Barry Trotz. You have some youngsters down that have already proved themselves with the Milwaukee Admirals and got playing time towards the end of last season. So how are they going to factor into all these training camp battles? So I'm going to give you my preferred starting lineup, both forwards and defensive pairings, my preferred, not necessarily prediction, but what I would love to happen if everything goes smoothly and these certain players that I choose look really good and earn it in training camp. That would be my preferred starting lineup. I'm going to go through some of the different factors and question marks surrounding that lineup. I've got it in front of me right here, so I will go through that with you all and would love to hear your comments in the YouTube section below on your thoughts about my lineup when I put that out there, both the forwards and the defensemen. I don't think we need to talk too much about goaltending because it's obviously, once again, going to be the duo of UC Saros and Kevin Lankinen, so we don't really have to get into that too much. But after that, on this portion of this YouTube channel portion, as we try to get ahead of Hurricane Idalia, also going to discuss a little bit about the preseason coming up and some of the players that are going to be sticking out to me. That's going to tie into building my lineup. And then hopefully we can do a live portion, as I said, later tonight if the weather cooperates. And Rich Howe will join me to fill out episode 196. So let's get into it right now with building the Preds starting lineup for opening night at Tampa, which is on October 10th. So we're about 6 weeks away, give or take. I think I saw 45 days is the official amount of days we are away from the season opener. It still feels so far away. I know it does, but we are less than a month away from the preseason opener, that doubleheader against the Florida Panthers. I'm going to be pretty excited about watching preseason this year. I can't remember a time where I'm actually going to be, well, I'm going to be happy because Preds hockey's back. But I mean, to watch preseason games, my excitement level is going to be way higher than it normally is, just because there is so much new and freshness to this team and this organization, obviously. And so it's going to make watching it all the more better. So let me go ahead and share on the screen for you my biggest questions for training camp. And so there you have, or for this Predator starting lineup to build it. And there's what I have for you there. And of course, my first major question is that top line. I mean, obviously, anytime you got a new roster and you got a new team, you're looking at the top line. And most importantly, how are the Predators going to fill out the top line? Because we feel pretty confident that Philip Forsberg is going to be your left wing and Ryan O'Reilly is going to be your top line center. Otherwise, why did you even go out and get Ryan O'Reilly in free agency to begin with? So that feels pretty safe, like 99, maybe 95% certain that those two are going to be on your top line. Where do you fill it out from there? I think it gets a little bit more tricky. I can tell you who I want it to be, and I've already made that very clear in past episodes recently. But I think the majority of the Predators fan base would love for it to be Luke Evangelista, obviously, who is going to be entering his official rookie season in the NHL. Saw a recent post from our friends at the Hockey Podcast Network. They put out the top 10 Calder Trophy odds candidates from DraftKings, our sponsor, and Luke Evangelista came in at number 10 on the odds. It was just cool to see him on the list, honestly. Obviously, he's a long shot because it's a stacked rookie class led by Connor Bedard, but it was still really cool to see him on there. So you got to think that as long as he can have a strong training camp and doesn't give any glaring red flags to the coaching staff that he might not be ready for that top line role, then you got to think the coaching staff is going to go with the hot hand and is going to go with the youngster and see how he performs. But obviously, major spotlight's going to be on Luke Evangelista in those preseason games just to see if he can kind of take over those games. At the very least, can he replicate what he was already showing us when he got called up last year? Ended up playing in 24 games, I believe, down the stretch when he got caught up, when the Predators were having to lean on so many young players. Basically, a AHL squad was out there, and somehow they still fell 3 points shy of the Winnipeg Jets. So, yeah, we're looking for Luke Evangelista. What if it's not, though? What if for some reason the coaching staff decides, you know what, Luke Evangelista might not be ready for top line minutes just yet? If that happens, well, then we the first player people are going to think about, and I'm not crazy about this, but it might just be a situation where the coaching staff wants to go with experience over youth just to make sure they're ready, especially coming right out of the gate. They might go with Gustav Nyquist, another free agency acquisition along with Ryan O'Reilly. So you would have two of your three top line forwards you just acquired in the offseason of free agency. I don't necessarily see that happening, but I don't take it out of the realm of possibility if for some reason the coaching staff sees some things that Luke Evangelista needs to work on before they put him on that top line. That's not my preferred scenario, just leaving it out there that it could happen. Another possibility, if it's not Evangelista, if it's not Nyquist, what happens if Phil Tomasino just completely impresses and dazzles in the preseason and in training camp, and the coaching staff's like, okay, we're going to go with Philip Tomasino because he's already got 2 seasons under his belt in the NHL, and this is his coming out party here. This is where he really makes a statement. He's a little bit further along in his development than Luke Evangelista is, and we want to give Tomasino the shot. That's certainly possible as well, although I think it's a little bit of a long shot, but it's certainly possible. But my preferred right winger on the top line with Ryan O'Reilly and Philip Forsberg is Luke Evangelista. We got to keep an eye on that, though. My next big question surrounding the Predators starting lineup is sorting out the defensive pairings, and most notably, where will Dante Fabro fit? He was on my trade block all last season. I thought for sure he would be one of the ones that got traded, way more so than I could have ever dreamt of Tanner Jeannot or Matthias Ekholm getting traded. I thought Dante Fabro would have been gone before those two for sure. Didn't happen. He stuck around. He's on a 1-year deal. I just don't know. And it's because of the Luke Shin addition, another free agency addition that no one really saw coming, just really complicates things. So now we got to sort out the defensive pairings here. And I'm about to let you know how I set those up. But I think Dante Fabro is obviously the biggest question mark out of all of the defensemen, and how you're going to fill out the starting lineup on defense for the Predators. My final biggest question surrounding the Predators starting lineup going into the preseason is who are the roster bubble players and who will be a preseason standout. So when it comes to that, roster bubble players are pretty obvious when you think about it. Kiefer Sherwood, Cole Smith, Michael McCarron. I think you could throw Jeremy Lauzon on defense in there as a roster bubble player as far as starting. Not like he'll make the team, but is he going to start, or is he going to be a healthy scratch more so than not? You've got Denis Gurianov was added late in free agency. He's gonna have a microscope on him in training camp. The stock is really, really down on Gurianov. You talk to Dallas Stars fans, and they'll just tell you he never, ever lived up to what he was supposed to do. He never lived up to the talent he has. He did have a 4-goal game in a playoff game one time for the Stars, but it's one of those things where he has all the talent in the world. He's never really been able to put it together. So the Predators took a flyer on him. So Gurianov, let's see. He is definitely a roster bubble player, but he's one that I think was worth taking the flyer on. I said that, I joked around about it in a previous episode, that I think it could end up being a huge bargain of a deal that the Predators made. But the stock's really down on Gurianov, so he's got a lot to prove. He's definitely a bubble player. And then, let's talk about Igor Afanasyev, of course. I think he has the most to gain possibly in preseason is Igor Afanasyev. And he could end up being a preseason standout that catapults him into getting a starting spot. I'm about to expand on that more when I give you my preferred starting lineup for the Predators. Not my prediction, but my preferred lineup. So those are my 3 biggest questions right there for the Predators starting lineup. Now let's get to the nitty-gritty here. Let's get into building my starting lineup, and then I'm sure I'll get plenty of pushback and plenty of critics on it, but that's why we do these things, and that's why they're so much fun. All right, so top line, I already pretty much covered it. You know where I'm going with this. My preferred top line is Philip Forsberg, Ryan O'Reilly, Luke Evangelista. I love giving Evangelista that opportunity, that juicy opportunity to play with 2 veterans who can bring out the most in him. Could be a great situation for Evangelista to play with a tested veteran like Ryan O'Reilly. And we see where it goes from there. I think the sky could be the limit, and it could actually keep Evangelista in that Calder Trophy race, at least for a little bit. I know he's never realistically going to take over Connor Bedard or some of the other big-time rookies that are going to be out there this season, but I think it could bring out the best in Evangelista, even more so than what we saw down the stretch of his first 24 games in the NHL. All right, second line gets a little bit more complicated, but here it goes. My second line center has to be Cody Glass. I think I'm in the majority of people's thoughts there. Cody Glass, he has top line center experience now, which was great for him. And now he's looking to carry that over even more. I wouldn't look at it as a demotion by any means that he's going to be playing second line center. It just means that the Predators wanted to go out and get Ryan O'Reilly. So now Cody Glass is going to move down to the second line center role, and he's still going to have every opportunity to shine in that moment and really be a huge X factor for this team. So you stick Cody Glass on the second line center role for me. Juuso Parssinen is my left wing on the second line. And I think Cody Glass and Juuso Parssinen can do a lot of really awesome things together this season. Parssinen, that big body that can screen the goaltender, can get the loose pucks, can throw his body around, but still has that shot, still has that playmaking ability, can still do those amazing things like he did when he scored on a breakaway and do the things that he can do. So much like I like giving Evangelista that juicy opportunity on the top line, I think Yusuf Parsons earned his shot at being on the second line to open the season as a left wing to Cody Glass at center. And then that means your right wing. If I'm putting Evangelista on the top line, then it comes down to Nyquist or Tomasino for the right wing position on the second line. I'll tell you what I think is going to happen, and I'll tell you what I would prefer to happen. What I think is going to happen is they're going to go with Gustav Nyquist. They're going to go with the safer pick, the veteran, someone who can have some stability, because you are going to have two younger players in Cody Glass and Yusuf Parson on the second line if it goes the way I think it might go. So you might want that veteran to stabilize and have some experience in those moments on the second line, at least to start the season. But my preferred right wing on the second line would, of course, it would be Philip Tomasino. I hope he does everything he can to earn it in training camp and in those preseason games to give the coaching staff really no choice but to say, Tomasino earned it. We got to put him up there. That means you have a pretty young and inexperienced second line, though, and there is risk reward with that, and you got to take that into account. So that's where I'm at with it. I would prefer to see it be Tomasino, but I feel like they might go the safer route and go with Nyquist. We'll have to wait and see there, but that's a big question. That might be the biggest question mark of all out of the top two lines, is who's going to be on the right wing of the second line with Cody Glass and Parson, and that's going to be interesting to see how that unfolds in training camp and in the preseason games, and what type of line combinations they roll out on those top two lines in the games that they have in the preseason. Let's go to the third line. Third line's a little bit easier for me to come up with, but again, it comes down to Nyquist or Tomasino, the one who doesn't get that second line role. Well, they're going to be on the third line. So I think more than likely it might be Tomasino to start the season. He could really flourish there. I mean, on third line minutes are nothing to scoff at. I think he could flourish there. He could be the offensive depth scoring player that they need. And you put him with Tommy Novak on the third line as a center, you've got a pretty good third line there that can give you some offensive pop if you put Novak with Tomasino. I actually really like that. Even though I would prefer Tomasino on the second line, I don't think it's a big slap in the face if you move Tomasino down and you take the safer bet with Nyquist. And so you put Tomasino and Novak together on the third line, and then you go with Yakov Trenin on the left wing for the third line. I feel pretty good about that. I really like the possibility of that third line of Trenin, Novak, and Tomasino. That leaves your fourth line with none other than Colton Sissons. He's going to be your fourth line center. You got to have Sissons in there to do all the dirty work, to be the veteran leader that's going to win faceoffs for you. He's going to throw his body out there to block shots and do all the things that don't really get praised in the box score like they should. So I like Sissons to retain that fourth line role and give us that stability that you need on a fourth line. And then his two wingers are very much up in the air and very much to be settled in training camp and in the preseason action. Who plays the best? Who impresses the coaching staff? That has to be settled. And when I look at it, I think a big training camp battle could be between Garyanov and Kiefer Sherwood for the right wing spot to start the season on the fourth line with Colton Sissons at center. That's a camp battle. Who outperforms who? I think they could both eventually get starts throughout the season, but who starts initially to open the season in Tampa on the fourth line? I think it comes down to me and as a camp battle to watch, Denis Garyanov, the newcomer, or Kiefer Sherwood, who really did do some great things and really surprised a lot of people in the way he played and the energy he brought to the team. He was relatively unknown going into last season. Remember the Global Series against the San Jose Sharks? He scores the first goal of the season for the Predators, and I think he ends up scoring the last goal of the season for the Predators, if I'm not mistaken. Wild coincidence. But yes, I think Kiefer Sherwood is going to battle directly with Dennis Gurianov to see who starts. That's going to be interesting to see. And then, of course, on the left wing side, also very much up for grabs. You've got a lot of players you could throw in there, including Cole Smith. You could throw in Michael McCarron, although I think he's pretty far out there. I don't see Michael McCarron starting in Nashville. I could see him being in Milwaukee to open the season, but you can't completely gloss over him. Cole Smith, I could see being a healthy scratch, or somehow maybe he's more of a jet product of the John Hines system. So I don't see Cole Smith necessarily starting either. I think Igor Afanasyev, it's his to win in training camp, but he's obviously got to show it, and he's got to have a really strong camp, and he's got to do some special things in preseason to earn it. It's not going to be handed to him. But Igor Afanasyev, don't forget about him getting a left wing start on the fourth line to open the season, because I do think this is his season where he needs to show he graduates from being just an AHL player and gets off the roster bubble a bit and gets into the starting lineup. So I've got Igor Afanasyev as my preferred fourth line winger with Colton Sissons. And if I really got to say who do I prefer over Gurianov or Sherwood, no offense to Sherwood, but I would like Dennis Gurianov to work out here. I would like him to finally tap into his potential that he's never lived up to, really. Certainly didn't do it in Dallas. Otherwise, he'd still be there probably. I want to see him untap some of that potential and end up being a really good bargain find for the Predators. So suddenly the fourth line can give you some offensive pop as well. So that's what my starting lineup looks like on the Fords preferred. Doesn't mean it's going to happen, but that's what I prefer there. So I will share that on the screen here in just a second. But until I get to that, I want to also shift over to the defensive side of things and give you my defensive pairings. Let's see here. Let's get to it. First of all, everybody, thank you for joining me on YouTube. Really appreciate that. Yeah, the storm is crazy down here. I got all my hurricane prepping done. I am in the Tampa area. It looks like we're going to get very, very fortunate here, and it's going to avoid a direct hit, which is very, very thankful for that. But it has to hit somewhere, and I am extremely, extremely worried about the great people who live in what they call the Big Bend of Florida, which is it's a lot of trees and rural area of Florida. I'm really hoping those people took the warnings and got out of there and did all of that. All right, so let's see. Before I share that, let's get to the defense real quick, and then I'll put up my forward lines for the screen for everyone to see as I try to pull that up here. Defensive pairings, a little bit more easy to sort through than the forwards, I would say. But let's start with the top pairing, and I don't think the top pairing is set in stone necessarily. It comes down to, of course, Roman Josi, your captain, is going to once again look to maybe replicate somewhat, be a 70-plus point scorer. I think would be a really fair expectation for Roman Josi this upcoming season. So let's see if that can happen. And then who gets to start on the right side from the captain? That's something I think we all have to think about. Really do. So I actually would like to have Alexander Carrier get the opportunity to play with Roman Josi to open the season. The Predators really need a long-term future to work out with Alexander Carrier. We know he's got the potential. We know he's done some special things when he finally did get his NHL call-up, and he finally did get to stick around, and he was a full-time NHLer on the Predators roster. That was awesome to see. And he's done some special things. Last season was just didn't go his way for a lot of reasons, mainly because he just couldn't stay healthy. And so now he's got a clean slate here, and I want to see him play with Josi again and see how he responds to that. That would be a really preferred thing for me to see happen. All right, before I do that, let me get my forward. I got the graphic pulled up. Let me show you officially my forward lines and what I would like to see on opening night. There you go. Philip Forsberg, Ryan O'Reilly, Luke Evangelista is my top line. Juuso Parssinen, Cody Glass, Philip Tomasino, is my second line. Third line is Yakov Trenin, Tommy Novak at center, and Gustav Nyquist. And for my fourth line, Igor Afanasyev, Colton Sissons, and Dennis Garyanov. That means Sherwood would be a healthy scratch for me. That means Cole Smith would be a healthy scratch for me. And McCarron's out of there. And yeah, kind of interesting, but that's kind of what I see. That's what I prefer. Doesn't mean I'm predicting it, but we will see. All right, let's get back to my defense now and what I want to see there. Yeah, I want to see Alexander Carrier get a shot. I want to see Alexander Carrier get a shot on the right defensive side with the captain, Roman Josi. My second pairing, I don't think there should be a lot of argument among any Preds fans on the second pairing. I think it's pretty set, and you feel really confident about this second pairing, and that would be your two veterans, Ryan McDonough on the left and Tyson Barrie on the right. You feel good about that. That's a really respectable second defensive pairing. Obviously, you need some injury luck this year. Ryan McDonough had some injury problems as well. Roman Josi missed a huge chunk of the season. Tyson Barrie was still getting comfortable with his new team as a trade deadline acquisition. So there's a lot of promise here with the Preds defensive corps. A lot of promise. And I love that second pairing, that veteran leadership. Tyson Barrie can hopefully give you some offense and some power play help this year. And, of course, Ryan McDonough is the steady veteran that's going to be a leader on the ice, a leader off the ice as well. And he is going to be a big stabilizing force there on the second pairing. So I really feel good about that. That's your third pairing, a lot more drama. And that's obviously, like I already said, with Dante Fabro. I don't know. I mean, this would be easy to decide on if Luke Schenn wasn't signed, but he was. And I can't see a scenario where you don't start Luke Schenn, obviously. So if Luke Schenn is your right defenseman, more than likely, your left side comes down to either Jeremy Lauzon or Dante Fabro. And I'm not trying to be overly critical or unfair about my thoughts on Fabro because I do think he's a very solid defensive defenseman, but I've just never been impressed with his trajectory. I feel like his ceiling is really low and his days are just numbered in Nashville. I don't see him making it to next offseason on this team. So with that said, not that I'm so uber crazy about Jeremy Lauzon. He has his own issues as well, but I feel better about Jeremy Lauzon being the rugged third pairing defenseman who can at least impose a physical force and a physical presence on that third pairing and lay out the hits. Obviously, you need him to have cooler heads sometime and avoid that penalty box, but you take what you're going to take when you have Jeremy Lauzon out there. But yeah, Jeremy Lauzon and Luke Schenn as my third pairing defenseman, not crazy about it. Honestly, I don't even see I'm going to have to see it to really believe it on making sense of the Luke Schenn signing. I'm still not crazy about it. And until I see results on the ice, I'm going to have a hard time changing my mind on that. But we have him, and he's here, and he's going to start. So that pushes out Dante Fabro at least out of the gate. And then Fabro will get his chances to start here and there. I don't think he's just going to be benched the whole year, obviously. They're going to swap out Lauzon and Fabro, I would expect. But there might be maintenance days where Luke Schenn doesn't play, and then you start both Fabro and Lauzon together. But either way, I think Fabro is the odd man out right now, and he's going to have to work his way back in the lineup. He's another player that I think has to have a really, really, really strong preseason showing and give the coaches reasons to see something in his game where maybe they do say, okay, we can put Fabro in over Lauzon because Fabro can maybe provide more offense than Lauzon. We'll see. Maybe Fabro shows his hockey IQ as being a little bit better than Lauzon, and maybe the coaches lean towards that. But he's got to have a really good, impressive preseason and training camp showing. But as of now, for me, it's Lauzon and Luke Schenn on your third pairing. That would mean that Fabro would be a scratch along with Cole Smith and Kiefer Sherwood. I will also say keep an eye on Spencer Stastny, who got his first taste of NHL action and looked really good, I thought. I really do. I don't think people have talked about it enough that I thought Spencer Stastny did really well in his first taste of the NHL. So keep an eye on him. I could see him getting called up at some point. He's one of the first players I have circled that's going to get a call up at some point next season, whether it's through injuries or whether it's through poor play from a combination of Luke Shin or Dante Fabro or Jeremy Lazon. Then you call up Spencer Stastny and see what he can do. See if he can provide you a spark. So don't overlook Spencer Stastny and all that. So that is my starting forwards and my starting defensive pairings against Tampa to open the 23-24 season, which is about 6 weeks away. Let me know in the comment section on YouTube what you think about my starting lineup. Did I leave someone out? Am I crazy for leaving out a certain player? Do you think I'm overhyping a certain player? Would you just tinker with my line combinations a little bit? Would love to hear your thoughts on it on our YouTube channel through the comment section. And while you're at it, please hit subscribe. Again, that's really helpful. Let's tell you about DraftKings right now here on episode 196. Getting this episode in before Hurricane Idalia sweeps by in the Gulf of Mexico. All right, we know college football had actually already started. They had week 0 this past weekend, but the big time college football kickoff starts this week into Saturday. So DraftKings has an awesome offer for you to get ready for college football. College football fans, are you ready for week 1? DraftKings Sportsbook is hooking you up with a can't-miss offer to start the season strong. This week, new customers can bet just $5 on college football and score $200 in bonus bets instantly. Anything can happen in college football. Your team could go from unranked to dynasty mode in just a couple of years. That is a really great line, but I'm a Vanderbilt fan. So just a couple years, I don't know about that. But either way, pretty cool. Change comes fast. The only thing that's a lock is the great offers from DraftKings Sportsbook. That is definitely true. So life's more fun when you're in the action. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use code THPN. New customers can score $200 in bonus bets instantly when they bet just $5 on college football. Only on DraftKings Sportsbook with code THPN. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.1800gambler.net. In New York, call 877-8-HOPENY or text HOPENY, which is 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly on behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas. 21 plus, age varies by jurisdiction, void in Ontario. See DraftKings.com/football for eligibility, terms, and responsible gaming resources. Bonus bets expire 7 days after issuance. Eligibility and deposit restrictions apply. So take advantage of a new DraftKings offer for all of you college football fans out there as we finally have college football back. Awesome. Can't wait. I prefer college football over NFL, but I will say I'm kind of a little freaked out by this whole conference realignment thing that's going on in college football, where it's basically just becoming another version of the NFL, and you're losing all these historic rivalries, and it's all about money. And I do love the fact that amateur athletes are getting paid for their likeness. I've always been a proponent of that. You should get paid for the talent and the skills that you possess. No one should be able to get rich off someone else's name unless that it's the person's name that the person's doing that type of thing. But I will say that this conference realignment thing is really weird. And I hope it doesn't mess with the purity of college football, because that's what I've liked always more than the NFL. So let's get ready for some college football. All right. Let's move along here in episode 196 of Catfish on Ice. We got a couple more things I want to get into here on the YouTube channel, and then hopefully we can get you a live portion later tonight if Hurricane Idalia cooperates and I don't lose my internet or my power, and we can get my co-host Rich Howe in for a live portion of this episode. All right, so I wanted to talk about some players who have the most to gain in the preseason, and I've already given you my starting lineup. Igor Afanasyev, I already threw out there, and let me expand on that a little bit more. Igor Afanasyev, it's time for him to graduate from the AHL. I truly believe that this is his season. He got a taste of it last year. I thought he looked good. I know he only scored 1 goal in his 17 games, I believe, that he played, but he got a lot of shots. He was aggressive. He had over 50 shots on goal, I believe, somewhere around there. So I think that he can definitely take a new step up in his second season in the NHL, but he's going to have to earn that obviously in the preseason. And if he has a down preseason, or if he does some things that don't work out in training camp, coaches might feel like they have to start him with the Admirals once again. And then he'll have to just once again work his way back to getting called up, which I think would eventually happen regardless. But I would love to see him just really take this preseason stage by storm, score a couple goals, really be the primary aggressor in those preseason games, and really take a step forward and show the coaches that it's time for him to be a regular NHL starter. That would be great news for this team. It'd be great news for Andrew Brunette as he's trying to get more offense into this team that finished near the bottom in goals per game this past year. Got to see a big improvement in that. If Igor Afanasyev decides to just break out this year, you want to talk about an added bonus that can really push this Predators team, but not only back into the playoffs, but maybe even a third place finish in the division. But you need an outlier. You need a couple breakout players that come out of nowhere. Igor Afanasyev is absolutely that top player for me. And then shifting on the other side, Denis Gurianov, as I mentioned, would love to see him figure some things out and really take it in stride that he's got new scenery. Take it as a chip on his shoulder approach that he's not done. He's on a 1-year deal, and it's very much a 1-year prove it type of deal where he's kind of playing for his NHL life a little bit here. And he really needs it to work out in Nashville, a team that's given him a chance. So we will see how Denis Gurianov fits into the lineup, but he's another one that's big on my preseason most approved for the players that I look at. Looking further into the roster, of course, I mentioned Luke Evangelista, although I think he is deadlocked to be a starter. Can he earn that top line role? Another one is Yakov Trenin. Haven't really mentioned him much in this episode yet, other than saying that I do want him on the third line to start. But he's also entering tricky territory here, especially with his contract situation. He will be a free agent in the offseason, and it's another one of those situations where you look at all the talent that's coming up and you look at where this team is heading. You wonder if Yakov Trenin is going to be one of those players that if he's not traded, he might just be allowed to test free agency next offseason and the Predators just let him go because he's going to want a raise next offseason. He's very much deserves one. But are the Predators going to be able to retain him with so many free agents coming up in the 2024 offseason? I just did an article for Predlines looking way ahead at free agency next offseason, and the Predators have, let's see, make sure I get that, 8. I think they have 8. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, they have 8 free agents among their forwards in 2024. 6 of those 8 will be unrestricted free agents, including Yakov Trenin, who is currently got a $1.7 million cap hit. You would think that he's going to want to get paid a little bit more than that in the offseason. Are the Predators going to be able to hold on to Yakov Trenin for that same amount, for more money, and while also trying to figure out some of these other unrestricted free agents that they actually probably want to keep a little bit more, like Thomas Novak, who's going to be an unrestricted free agent. Kiefer Sherwood, he's on a minimum deal right now, but the Predators might see a big situation where they want to keep Kiefer Sherwood over Yakov Trenin. I mean, that would be pretty surprising, but we got to see how everything plays out. And then you've got your 2 RFAs that are going to be major priorities in the offseason. If they don't already, they might get re-signed before we even get that far. But of course, Juuso Parssinen and Philip Tomasino are going to be restricted free agents. So you're definitely going to pay them and give them a little bit of a raise and probably give them a multi-year deal if you see fit. And so yeah, maybe you just aren't able to keep Yakov training past this season. So he's one that's kind of on my spotlight. Maybe not so much in preseason action, but definitely as the season gets going in the first few games of the season, we need Yakov Trenin to, he's going to have to really prove to the organization that he's worth keeping past the 2024 offseason. Defensively, of course, already talked about it. Dante Fabro, he needs to have a strong preseason. He needs to earn himself a starting spot over Jeremy Lazan. I think that's a training camp battle to watch, is who outperforms who between Jeremy Lazan and Dante Fabro. And then also the other training camp battle that I brought up was Dennis Garyanov and Kiefer Sherwood. So really excited about getting to the preseason. It's not that far away, less than a month now. September 25th, mark your calendars. The Predators will play a doubleheader against the Florida Panthers, and saw something super, super cool. Portions of the general admission ticket prices will go to helping youth hockey grow in South Florida. So very, very cool stuff that the Florida Panthers are doing there to grow the game of hockey for all the youngsters down in South Florida. You know, it gives them a good sense of learning a new sport. If they haven't ever played hockey or ever had hockey around them, it's great for the community. So I'm going to definitely, if I can find time, I'm going to try to go down there and catch some preseason action, because that's about a 2-hour drive for me, and I would love to not only help a great cause, but see the Predators play some preseason action. That would be fun. So we will see how that goes, but keep that in mind. If you want a little South Florida vacation next month and you want to see some road hockey for the Predators in the preseason, come on down here, and you're helping a great cause, if nothing else. So yes, that's what I got for you for the YouTube edition. Hopefully we can round it out with a live portion. If not, we will see you on the other side. Thanks for hanging out with me. We're also going to tell you about Raycon, promo code THPN here in just a little bit. But until then, everyone stay safe, especially if you're down here in Florida, or even if you're in Georgia or in South Carolina. This hurricane is going to be heading across land tomorrow, and we want everyone to be safe and take all the precautions that they need to take. It's been a pleasure. This has been episode 196 of Catfish on Ice on our YouTube channel, brought to you by DraftKings and Raycon with our promo codes THPN, part of the Hockey Podcast Network. You can also catch us on Spotify, Apple, and all the other podcast platforms. Thank you for joining me. Take care.